Let me see here.
We are live. We are live. We are going to do a interview with Daniel Mercuri.
Okay, I got you.
Let me address this. That's how you say it, right? Mercuri?
Yeah, Mercury, like the car.
Okay.
Or the Greek god.
Or the Greek god. Hey, whichever one you want.
Whichever one works.
Either one. We are doing an interview one-on-one that we available. We are doing an interview one-on-one with any of the candidates that are ballot qualified. This is our 8th interview today. We're interviewing all candidates that requested who are ballot qualified and have participated in the Yes California debates. This is part of our continuing series where we attempt to provide real information as provided by the candidates, unfiltered directly to you, the voters, and providing a service that apparently network television and all the newspapers in California are unable to provide during this recall election. We are proud to provide this information service directly to you, the public, and the voters, because an informed electorate is what America's all about. So let's get right to it. We're going to talk to candidate Daniel Mercuri for about an hour. Half of the hour is going to be on politics, what he'd like to be known as a candidate, and then the second half will be the question that we like to ask here at Yes California. What do you think about California's, a country? You can hate the idea, love the idea, oppose it, say I'll fight my whole life for it. We just want to have a conversation. And discussing ideas in a democracy is democratic in itself. Yes. All right, let's get right to it. Daniel Mercuri, I like to always ask people to introduce themselves. So this is a little game to get you in the right mind frame that some of the other candidates liked. We both are in a cigar store, and we're walking up to the counter. I got a cigar in my hand. You got a cigar in your hand. I'm purchasing my cigar. And I'm turning to walk out that door, but I'm standing right next to you. And I have 2 minutes where I can't go anywhere. And you have my ear. How would you introduce yourself to me, the random person, so that when I got home, maybe I wasn't sure you're the right guy, but boy, I couldn't get that phrase out of my head you said, that concept, that wisdom, that truth. What is it that you would say to me to incept me? Make it where I can't stop thinking about you and your campaign, and I have to look you up the moment I get home in 2 minutes and no more. Candidate Mercuri.
Well, I think one of the first things that I would probably say is that I don't pander, and that I don't really care for sensitivity. And if you have sensitivity issues, you can probably just take the door and exit. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And I want to tell you the hard truths, whether you like it or not. So one of the best things I tell about people too is that I am a believer in Jesus Christ. Jesus is my Lord and Savior. He's the foundation of everything that I do. I'm not a perfect man, but I think we live in a time now where we have removed God so much from our lives that accountability is no longer here. And this is not the country that I fought for. As a veteran, I didn't fight for communism. I didn't fight for Marxism. I sure as heck didn't fight for socialism. And I think it's time somebody like me that is willing to clean house. And the longer that I have been in this campaign, the more I've realized it's not about policies. We can talk about policies all day long, but with a supermajority and with a corrupt legislative branch and a judicial branch, we need to be talking about how we're going to clean house and remove reprobates out of office. That is what I stand on, and that is what my campaign is about.
Let's get right to that. Let's go down that rabbit hole. You're governor. You were elected. 65% of the voters loved you. You have a mandate from the people. You're officially in power. Top 3 things you do within the first 100 days to clean house, as you say it.
First 100 days. Well, first I need to get through the first 30 days. I think one of the first things that we need to do here in the state of California is we need to first end the state of emergency. That in and of itself is going to relinquish and remove a lot of these fines, a lot of these fees that a lot of small businesses, the backbone of any great economy, has been suffering. So that right there is going to end. And it's predominantly going to end as soon as that state of emergency is over with, is where I'm going to fire the health director. The health director reports directly to the governor, as well as perform an investigation on the health department among the rank and file. That is then going to put and push back against a lot of the other counties if they think that they want to continue this. That will not happen. So that is one of the first things that I'm going to do right from the start. And as a few other candidates say, before they have breakfast or before they have their tea, this is going to be the first thing before I even get out of bed. So,
okay.
So that's those are some of the, that's one of the first few things that I'm going to do as far as handing back the state over to the people, ensuring that they're able to handle things at the local level. Another thing too is a lot of people say, well, what are you going to do at the local level? Because right now the state of emergency can end within the counties, but they're not doing that. It's a long story as to why this is happening. But one of the things that a governor can do too is the governor appoints the board members when it comes to CalPERS and CalSTERS. Those board members respond and report to the governor, which a lot of people don't know about this. And what I've learned too is a lot of these counties who have accepted the Dominion machine, they have signed agreements and contracts that say that they will not audit those machines. That tells me right there that they have taken a handout and they got into a contractual agreement, which means that they have abused the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, where it talks about the right to contract. The right to a contract is not limited under that article, meaning that the states cannot come up with any law to prevent the fulfillment of an obligation of a contract. So they're abusing the right to a contract being not limited. So what we can do is we can prevent them getting their insurances or their retirement and perform an investigation. If you put me in charge, I'm going to ensure that everybody who sits on the board of supervisors who has violated the California Brown Act, who has violated Article 1, Section 3 of the California State Constitution, where it specifically says that our representatives are there to be instructed by the people, and they are there for counsel, and they have completely abused that, and everyone's grievances is falling on deaf ears. Watch how fast when I change and I start investigating their kickbacks and their insurances and their retirement plans and how much they have been inflated. They're going to get in line very quickly at the local level without me having to do anything illegal. I will abide by the rule of law and I will respect the will of the people.
So that would be done before tea. You had done the other thing before you got out of bed. This would
probably lunch. I would say lunch.
By lunch. Okay.
By lunch.
Massive audits, ending the emergency stay. What's the third big thing to clear the deck that would need to be done on your first day?
That would be to prevent any more federal activity in the state of California when it comes to agencies like FBI, CIA, DEA. A lot of those agencies are going to be, I'm going to put a moratorium on them, which a governor can do, and reinstitute our sheriffs as the constitutional gatekeepers. They are voted in by the people under the California State Constitution. They cannot be removed by the governor or a mayor or city council or even the president of the United States. So the governor needs to be in their corner. You put them in charge. I can, under the California Emergency Services Act, I can institute an investigation, not just use it as for what's happening right now with the pandemic. No, it can be utilized to perform investigations. So I'm going to cease activities and get our sheriffs back in charge to ensure that any activity that's going on in our state that's at the federal level that is illegal, things that are investigations that are going on. No doubt federal government has kicked down many of our deputy doors, our sheriff's doors. A lot of them aren't getting the backing that they need from the governor. It's not supposed to be that way. They are constitutional gatekeepers. They will be reinstituted as constitutional gatekeepers under my administration.
Limiting the ability of federal agencies to have free reign here in California and redeveloping our law system so that we choose who decides our laws and enforces our laws exclusively here in California. Is that roughly what you're getting at?
Close to it, yes. It doesn't negate anything illegally. There's nothing illegal about it because of the fact that if there's to be any activity, federal agencies can operate, but they're going to have to go through the sheriffs to do that. And so we need to ensure that that is the case because of the fact that our sheriffs are supposed to be able to remove people who have violated their oath, but they're not being permitted to do that due to the fact that, well, we fall under business law, which is another thing that we need to change here in the state of California. So in part, yes, but it's not necessarily saying that we're going to disrespect or disregard. However, it's going to be a different kind of change of agreement. We're going to go right back under and utilize under the the Bill of Rights, the 10th Amendment, that the marine powers are left to the states. So they have been overstepping their bounds by far. So we need to pull that rein back in. And the only way you're going to do that, unless you get a governor who actually understands this and puts them back into the position that they were originally supposed to be in.
I really like that you have specific policy prescriptions. I mean, all the way drilled down. And I love the one about pushing back against federal authority. That I've never heard about it put that way. But you're right. If the local people are electing the sheriff, and that's the head law enforcement person, and then everybody should have to go through that node to be able to do whatever law enforcement activities they need there. So the FBI can still operate, but they go to the sheriff.
Yes.
Hey, we want to go round up this cartel. Well, that's not a cartel. That's the Garcia family. Those are good people. You don't need to mess with them. Oh, thanks, sheriff. So no, you don't get permission to do that. Come back. Oh, we found a real cartel. Okay, that really does look like a real cartel. Go get them.
Yes, and what's unique though is, and the reason why they've also been pinched is because the board of supervisors in each of our counties generally control the purse. So that's been given to through the legislative body, because there's so many counties. We've created the board of supervisors that comprises of 5 bodies. Well, they have a little too much authority. Again, if you read the California State Constitution, they have not only legislative powers, they also have executive powers and quasi-judicial powers. That's too much for one body, for 5 people, not to mention that they control the purse of your sheriffs. So the sheriffs are constantly having to play politics. Well, they're voted in by the people, and there is no reasoning why they can't control their own finances, their own management when it comes to their purse, when it comes to fiscal management. So, but what the beautiful thing about that is that as a governor, you can also create a proposition that will put the money into the sheriff's pocket, so that any taxes that the people pay out through those counties get rerouted directly to the sheriff's department. So then if the sheriff wants to have a pay raise, or if the sheriffs want more deputies, or they need more equipment or better equipment, or they need more training, they're going to have to go directly to the people. So if they're not performing well, then the people are going to say, no, you're doing terrible. Crime is up. Your deputies are out of control. We're not going to give you any more money. So now they're stuck. So they're going to have to start showing real numbers, real data, and the people can diminish every fiscal year during elections. So there's no reason why we can't do this. This is going to help ensure that the Constitution stays into play. People have a better control, especially over their law enforcement. And our law enforcement, our constitutional gatekeepers, can ensure that they don't have to play politics anymore with board of supervisors, city council mayors, and mayors. It allows for a more level, even playing field. So now everybody has to listen to each other, and they have to adhere to the will of the people more so than what they're doing right now. This is a way to do this. And as a governor, I can implement this.
I just heard you single-handedly come up with a way to give the pro-police people and Black Lives Matter everything they wanted in a common sense, logical solution that I could see both those sides who hate each other agreeing to. Wow. I'm not endorsing you. I'm just impressed with that is an original take that kind of gives everybody something that they want. I mean, how come we don't have more politicians suggesting ideas like that?
Because you just said the key word. They're they're politicians. They're playing politics. You know, in the military, one of the things that I learned was I was never, we always wanted more time to play. And we were always told, get it right the first time, find the core problem to what's going on, fix it, and then you have more time to play later. But don't waste any time. Get to the core problem. And, as a veteran, and I've been going up and down the state now, I've been campaigning now since literally right after I ran for Congress here in the 25th district. And what I was exposed to really opened my eyes up to the level of corruption. And I started realizing, I can come up with great policies all day long. We have a system that, we talk about systemic racism, but I always tell people we have systemic career politicians that are pouring salt on old wounds and keeping the people divided. We need to figure out how we're going to push back on them and take the power back out of their hand and hold them accountable, because there is no accountability. So what would I do to put power back into the people's hands so that it's a more level playing field, and we've got control of our government now? Because most people want to live in a self-governed society, right? We understand that there's some balances here where, yes, we've got government, but the point of government is really to provide more civil liberties, not less. Their point is also to ensure that there aren't any monopolies going on. Kind of like how, I think it was Google got together with Apple, who then got together with Amazon and shut down Parler. Well, that's a monopoly. Government should have came in with all their teeth and should have just smashed down on that monopoly, but they didn't. They actually perpetuated it and they allowed for it, and that's because they're part of that. So I had to think, well, what am I going to do if I'm in office to really show that the people are in charge and I want to give it back to them? This is one of the ways I had to do it. I had to dive deep.
So You're obviously on the conservative or right or whatever you call it side of the spectrum. So here's a tough question for you. I thought those were very interesting ideas, removing the emergency powers, auditing everybody, and looking at, I think, downsizing the unions. And then the idea about returning power to the sheriff's department. Most conservatives are running on what are we going to do with all the homeless and what are we going to do with all the undocumented? Why did you not list those as your 2 points when many other conservatives do? Why did the three that you mentioned, why are those the top big issues? This isn't a right or wrong question. It's why are those the priorities? Why did you not list the standard talking points that every other Republican comes out here saying, let's get all the illegals and, Antifa and round them all up? I saw you come up with very specific policy prescriptions. I don't see that with a lot of Republicans. Again, not knocking it. I'm just saying, why are you leading with different things than what the traditional person in that party is? Why are you different?
Well, again, you said it, traditional things that are, the same old, right? Ever changing, ever same, nothing ever, there's nothing ever new, right? So what I'm aiming towards is the core problems. And it actually does address the direction that I would start from, does actually address the homeless in the sense that when you get your board of supervisors and your city councils and your mayors in line, you actually start addressing to the things that we have going on. So for instance, when we have corrupt counties, when it comes to the homeless, a lot of people don't know that at the local level, you can claim a crisis, right? When you can claim a crisis, you can request more federal funding. So it benefits them to profit off of the homeless. So they perpetuate the problem purposely. So as a governor, again, from going top down to really try to control them by going a roundabout by giving control back to the people. And then, of course, holding them accountable. One of the things that a governor can also do is prevent any more requests at the local level from federal funding, right? The state can control that money that comes in. So you prevent that. And then you can also then, under the California state constitution, we have actually standardized low income housing, which means that there's really not a whole lot of profiting that you can do from that. But there's a profit margin to be met when you have the homeless and you have projects like Project Room Key, right? And not a lot of people get off the street, but yet these unions and these construction unions are getting all this money. They're getting billions of dollars and there's no real fiscal oversight. So nobody really knows where the money goes. So if as a governor, you can cease that activity, then you can perform those investigations with the sheriffs as your key elements to perform those investigations on these counties with where the money is actually going. And then watch how fast the homeless get off the street, because now there's no profit to be made from them. Because then as a governor, you can also propose to the people a standardization on how constitutionally we're going to handle the homeless. So once you standardize it under the Constitution, that removes the ability to profit from homeless. And then what that does is it allows our nonprofit organizations that are already tried and true. There's like 612 here, I think, in the state of California, and they've already been tried and true, meaning that they've already been pressured, they've been investigated, they've shown that they're legitimate organizations that deal with veterans, they deal with mental instability, families, illegal immigrants that end on the streets. So there are a lot of groups that deal specifically with different types of homeless. They just don't actually have a lot of facilities, and they're actually told not to engage them. So there is purposeful laws or county ordinances and regulations that prevent them from actually doing that. So the homeless aren't going to go to them, but then they're not being permitted, these nonprofits, to go in and actually clean up the streets, get them off the street. I've personally been down to Skid Row dozens of times. There's nobody down there.
For you.
There's nobody coming. I talked to them many times.
I respect that.
They're not. Thank you. So that's why I say this is why. So yes, I do have those answers for that. But this is how it's going to work, though. I've got to get everybody in line first. I got to make sure that everybody understands I'm not there to negotiate with anybody in the legislative branch. There's no negotiating. Not with me, there isn't.
So let me ask you a background question so the voters can get to know you a little bit. There's about 41, 46. I'm having trouble keeping track of candidates there.
46, and I think one dropped out, which was Doug Ossie due to heart conditions. So
due to
45.
a heart attack, that was really sad.
Yeah.
And a decent human being. I was able to talk to him on the phone. He was a decent man. Say what you will about his politics. He was a decent person.
Yes.
So I've talked to many of these candidates, and some of them that have been, lobbying in Sacramento, or they ran for office like McGowan or Kylie, you kind of understand why they have a lot of policy ideas. They were kind of exposed to it by force. But a lot of other people are running and they just know that there's certain things they don't like. And they're like, I'm the candidate that's going to fix climate change or homelessness or whatever. And maybe there are one or two issues. And they've looked into it enough to sound intelligent after they've already identified what the issue is. What I've seen with you and a few other candidates, Diego Martinez was another one, you seem to have burrowed down to the skeletal layer of policies and created a totally original understanding from the floor up as to what the policy is and why the problem is there. And you've done it for many different issues. How come I've only seen about 3 or 4 people out of 46 who are professional politicians who are able to do that? If you're in politics, I get why you would know that. Why are there so few people who are running for office? And these are all smart folks who are unable, or for whatever reason, can't seem to burrow from the base floor to the top ceiling of the policy to understand it all the way through and across different layers. Why is it you're able to look at that level of introspection on a variety of issues? And why is that so rare with so many candidates?
Well, I think, and this isn't to knock the candidates, this is just to simply say that no one's really actually, it's obvious to me when I speak to other candidates, I know that they have or have not actually read the California State Constitution. I actually am very aware of whether or not they are actually studying the Constitution and the history of our Constitution. It's obvious to me when, if they have gone to enough counties as to what's going on specifically, so what's going on up north when they're dealing with, forestry fires, then what's going on, say, east of California when they're dealing in agriculture and they're having water issues. And you go down to, say, maybe Los Angeles, are dealing with the homeless, all the way down south to San Diego, where they're dealing with a lot of illegal entry. So everybody's dealing with something different. It's very obvious to me when a candidate has actually taken the time to try to figure out and get down into the nitty gritty as to, one, why is it happening? What's causing it? And then what can we do that's legal, that's lawful, that and also respects the will of the people? What are the people screaming about? And then you've got to look at the laws as to what they're doing or what they're saying. So you have to look at the language. That's why one of my quotes is, they're a corrupt legislative branch will change the language to change your perception so that they can pass legislation the way they want it. And it really undermines the people because they don't know the language. That's why when we vote for a proposition, it says yes, you're really voting no. And if you vote no, you're really voting yes. So it's easy for me to understand that most of us come to a common sense understanding about how we should handle homeless or what should we do with crime. Most good people come to that, but the real problem is why is everything falling on deaf ears? And it's that investigation, the personal person, that candidate actually digging in and trying to figure out, why are our board of supervisors meeting in secret? If you go to Orange County or you go up north, if you go to Modesto, a lot of them are meeting outside or trying to they're trying to wait out the people so that they can meet at midnight. Why are they doing that? And if they're doing that, there's got to be something illegal. So I understand if you don't know what to ask, you don't know what to ask, right? You don't know what you don't know. So you have to start asking yourself the questions. And it's obvious to me the candidates aren't doing that because, again, there's a very surface level that maybe we all think, oh, Gavin's corrupt. It's not a Gavin. It's a legislative branch. If we look at Congress, this is the oldest Congress in history. I think it's, the 117th Congress? How many of them have been in office for 30, 40, and if not 50 plus years? It's not the president. It's the legislative branch. They're the most powerful. That's the most powerful branch of all 3 branches. We're such a legal system. I had to figure out, what's going on? And then I realized we're not really under the Constitution anymore. We're under business law. And that opened up the doorway to what's happening in each county. So to me, it's obvious that a lot of the candidates aren't digging down as to how they're going to prevent that further corruption that undermine everyone's sovereignty. That's what we want. We want our sovereignty. We want our freedoms. We like civil liberties. We want to be able to be entrepreneurs. We want to be able to engage in healthy discourse without, repercussions for having a thought. And now we have government that's, utilizing the pandemic to push an agenda that is not real, that is undermining everything, all in the name of health and safety. No. So that's the problem. And it's obvious to me that other candidates aren't actually digging down deep, or maybe they're just not really out there enough out there going from county to county, business to business. But I can see that, and that's maybe why this arena is unlike any other arena. So for me, I think that's just what it is. They just don't know where to go. They've not really been exposed to this, and they don't really know how to dig deep because, again, you don't know what you don't know.
Wow. Okay. Kind of plowed through a lot of the questions there. That was pretty good. That is Daniel for Cal Governor. Here, let me show you the screen. This is his website. Starve the government, feed the people. I can't be bought. I won't be bought. And I'll never be a vendido.
Well, and it's interesting. I'm glad you read that because when I ran for Congress, I think that was another thing that opened my eyes up to the level of corruption as to why our newly seated people that we think are amazing, they've spoken such, in generosities, and they spoke in genuineness. But what a lot of people don't understand is when you're running a campaign, you get approached by every kind of walk of life, that people want to, they really do want to buy you out. And when I say they, I mean super PACs, unions, technocrats, the representatives, lobbyists. The one thing I've learned is that the left, the people who are in control right now, cannot control the grassroots. So what they'll do is they'll blanket everybody, but they'll do it with a contract. And in the contract, some of these super PACs that approached me during I was running for Congress, it actually says in the contract, and it's written down, it says, if we endorse you, you have to take our money. And I thought that very peculiar. Why do I have to take your money? And down on the bottom, there's actually legal codes, state codes that basically I had to look up, and I was like, wait, what if I sign this? What am I signing? And why does it have to be contractual? And that is because if whatever PAC that you're signing with that's endorsing you, that tells you have to take their money, there has to be a trail, right? There has to be something that's an exchange in goods and services. When you make that agreement, you now are under their control, meaning that if you try to pass a law or you verbally say something or you try to enact something, they can take you to court. And that's where your judges can take the Constitution and they can just throw it out because you engaged in that contract. So it doesn't matter that your constituents are screaming at you. You have to abide by that contract because you made the agreement because you wanted that money for your campaign. That's why a lot of people get into office, suddenly they do a 180, they come out and they say some sort of weirdness like, I didn't know what I know, and things are a little bit more complicated, and but we're gonna solve the problems, right? So then it becomes all legal jargon again, and now you've got somebody who you thought you could trust. You cannot engage into a contract. So I realized as a governor, I'm not going to engage in any contract with any of our legislative bodies because I discovered this when I was running for Congress. And then when I wouldn't do this, when I wouldn't sign it, they would double down. And I got multiple, and they send this stuff to you in the mail. They send it to your campaign. And I realized, I said, wow, wait, so why do I have to sign it? And they really try to just gloss over, oh, don't worry about that. Can't you use $50,000? And I said, well, of course I could use $50,000. I can pay, a couple staff members now. And they said, but we also have, over 2,500 members, right? So they can send you the max, right? So I think for Congress, for federal, was the max of an individual donation was $2,500. So that was roughly $200,000 to $250,000 plus the 50 as a PAC. That's $300,000. And they were like, and we'll teach you how to keep the money by routing it through a nonprofit organization so that you can cycle the money back into your pocket. And this was just blatant and bolden, and part of it is legal. And if you engage into that contract, well, then, they can hold you under the thumb. This was stuff I did not know. And this forced me down further rabbit holes.
A lot of it's legal. It sounds like mafia level corruption is completely legal if you do it the right way. And that's just the system that exists. I remember talking to a few candidates and they were saying, why can't I break through? Why can't I get media? How come Kevin Paffrath gets media? And then they get these weird phone calls from different newspapers going, hey, do you want to buy ads? No, just calling. No real reason. Just calling. Hey, do you want to buy ads? Say $30,000 or $50,000 worth of ads. And they wouldn't say anything more than that.
Yeah.
But, and I, at first I didn't get it. And then I was like, okay, why are all these candidates getting random phone calls from the sales branch, not the interview branch, about do you want to buy ads? And how come certain candidates that I'm sorry, do not have the level of policy sophistication on display and recommending pipelines to Mississippi, which is a ridiculous concept. And why do they get so much coverage? And then it occurred to me, they're buying ads.
Yeah.
So you're seeing these top candidates because they've got money to dump when they really aren't that good a candidate. They don't actually care. They haven't been around. They don't understand the system, and they're not about breaking it apart. And it was just kind of gross to see that in real time, that it was so blatant that, there's quality people and they just can't get the same amount of light as somebody who's not as quality, but has a couple bucks. Really kind of letting the lowest quality people rise to the surface just because of something about dollar bills. It was unsettling to see, and I could see that there's a reflection there. Let me ask you, you're running for governor. You're governor. Well, how much right do California people have to be mad at Newsom? On the one hand, people are saying, hey, he acts like a king. He's taken over king powers. There's a lot of truth there. On the other hand, people say, hey, pandemic like we never see. Millions were going to die. He didn't know what he was getting into. He did the best he could given a tough situation that nobody knew how to handle, and he kept us alive. What's the right view? Do people have a right to be upset, or are they blaming sour grapes? In your opinion, what is the vibe behind this recall, and is it a legitimate grievance by the people of California against their governor?
No, I believe it's definite. It's a legitimate grievance that everybody has a right to be extraordinarily upset and angry and furious at Gavin Newsom. Again, if you don't know the law, there is no law, and if you don't know your rights, you have no rights. So a lot of people are confused because they bought into the fear. And so when that happens, people pretty much are waiting to be told what to think instead of thinking for themselves or how to think. Yeah. And so they're waiting for this information to be pumped out by the mainstream media that is in lockstep with corrupt government, especially here in the state of California. So again, if a lot of people understood the Constitution, even at a basic fundamental level, they would understand that the Constitution does not talk about health. In fact, the health department is not a government branch. And yet the government is allowing for them to actually operate in such a capacity, which actually is illegal. So the government can provide or allow for certain things, but ultimately at the end of the day, all a mandate and a regulation is a mandate and regulation that is a should or shall or could, may follow, but you don't have to because it's not law. That's why our legislative representatives haven't actually passed any of these laws. They're testing the waters to see how people are going to react to it. So everybody has a right to do this. But again, people say, well, the Constitution talks about, general welfare. But that was a debate between Adams and Hamilton that only talked about congressional spending and taxation. It had nothing to do with your health. So again, that's why they stayed away from it, because this has been going on for centuries, right? So all government did was utilize the pandemic. So it had nothing to do with, he was doing a great job. He was, he didn't know what he was into. Yes, he did, because he also got caught at the French Laundry, which means he knew exactly what he was doing. He just got caught. And that's really what fired people up, because of the do as I say, not as I do. So everybody has a right to do this. And this is why I actually went table to table, and I went around, and a lot of people were like, where were you at? And I was like, I actually went to countless tables with the recall, and I went to Lowe's and Home Depots and Targets and any corner where they were at. And all you had to do was go on the website. And I asked everybody who was signing if they were Republican or Democrat. It was Democrats. Majority Democrats were signing the recall over Republicans and independents combined. So this really started telling me that it's California is, if anything, I guess you could say, is more purple than anything else. But it told me that people are furious because as much as you might be left or right, the one thing that most people agree on is they like their freedom. They like their sovereignties, and nobody likes to be locked down for any reason. So everybody has every single right. And anybody that says Gavin was just doing his job or he was just doing the best he can, those people, in my personal opinion, are very ignorant. They don't know the facts. And they weren't maybe potentially nearly as affected as a lot of hardworking grassroots people in the state of California that are literally the backbone of any strong economy. And families and businesses and entrepreneurs, mass exodus. It's the first time in history that this has ever happened in the state of California. So they're completely blind. When you engage those people, I tell people, dust your feet off, walk away, and move on. You can't, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it.
There's a sizable chunk of Californians that feel that way. If you were governor, how would you reason with them? I mean, I know that they're promoting the poll right now that shows Newsom at 58%, but there was a poll days before that showed it 52-48. That's 50-50. That's within the margin of error. How does any governor run California knowing that they're taking one side and almost half the population is the total opposite opinion? That's a challenge for whoever's going to be governor.
No, it absolutely is. But one of the things that most people aren't going to argue about is opening up the state of California, is getting back to work. Countless business owners, people who have lost their jobs, are struggling. Even people who are on unemployment aren't really getting the unemployment anymore. So now they're starting to realize, wait, this was just a break for a short term. What am I going to do now? And now they're really fuming. They want more free money. But again, free money isn't free, right? Somebody always has to pay for it. So it's not going to be an easy route. And that's why I tell people I'm not here to change policy, because what was already necessarily happening, we were, what we had going on, we were already in a bad situation, but now we're in a worse situation. So the best thing that we're going to do first and foremost is to clean house, so that everybody can first and foremost get back to having their sovereignties and their freedoms. Then we can engage in proper discourse, because no one's going to be under the thumb of forced vaccines, forced mask mandates, or their kids having to be masked, and allow people the option of whether or not, you want to go into a place of business or not, that, allows for people or doesn't allow for people. So once we get back into that position, I think that's going to open up, proper discourse and information that's been hidden from the public. I've talked to way too many doctors, especially here in the state of California. If you talk to the state of California board, I've got people that I know that are working there, that they've already told all the doctors here that anybody that gives out a medical exemption, they're going to lose their license. So even though publicly people are saying, oh, you can get a medical exemption, the doctors are being told on the back end, don't do it or you're going to lose your license, because the California Medical Board is going to revoke it. These are the things they're not being told. So as a governor, I'm going to release all of the information that has been hidden out of the eyes of the people. And it's going to take time. It's going to take a little bit. I've even put up on my website that people are going to suffer from cognitive dissonance. It's going to happen because people have
great praise. Modern life, I get it.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I accept the fact that it's going to be a challenge. I don't pretend to sit there and tell you that, it's a one size fits all, kind of like what Gavin Newsom did, right? He shut everything down with a one size fits all. Well, if anybody studies anything when it comes to virology, you talk to a virologist and you talk about viruses and bacteria, they don't actually react. They're learning that viruses and bacteria don't react the same way in different atmospheric conditions. In fact, they're still testing this. So what Malibu goes through is not what Big Bear is going to go through atmospherically, right? And the heat in the valley is not the same as anybody up north where it's a little bit colder. So these are the things that we didn't do, and we didn't educate people on how to maintain their health and promote health. We locked everybody down. We quarantined the healthy, not the sick, which you're supposed to do the other way. You're supposed to quarantine the sick, not the healthy. So everything was backwards. This is how you know it's a lie. And as a governor, I'm going to release all of that information and unsilence those who have been silenced to get the information out, so that we can get back to what most of us are used to, which is proper, allowing for the good and the bad information, so that we can engage and proper discourse, and then make up our own minds with all the information, whether you like it or not. And then you'll be able to make a well-rounded decision. But we didn't. We had all that taken away. And so as a governor, I'm going to allow for all the information to be out in the open.
Okay. Well, you've heard from Daniel Mercuri on a variety of policies, who he is. You've gotten a flavor of what he's about, the kind of man he is, and the policy prescriptions he's looking at. We're going to go down to the second part, where we ask him the big question. We ask all the candidates. He can totally disagree, agree, hate the idea, take whatever stance he wants. We just believe that it's okay to have a conversation in a thriving country. So, California, Cal-exit, California as a nation, good idea, bad idea? What's your take?
My take on California exiting, for me personally as a veteran, I'm not a fan of the idea, predominantly because of the fact that it does a disservice to people who actually fought, bled, and died for this country so that we would be unified. And to secede from the union, for me personally, would do a great disservice, and for me would sort of be, spitting on their graves. And for those of us who are some people who are active duty right now and veterans that are still around, like myself, really don't align with that thought. However, I understand it, and it does in part make some sense in the fact that California is really one of the biggest states here, and of course one of the most heavily populated states. Probably one of a better idea might be to do is to try to maybe even break up the states. And now I know this has been spoken about before, debated before, and it needs some refinement. I wouldn't be opposed necessarily to that idea, but not completely seceding. And I understand why people want to secede, but there's better ways to going about it. In fact, I believe that what we can do as a state, we can actually create what's called a revocation of election. And as a state, we can create that kind of an apparatus where people revoke their status under the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 and get out from the IRS, where we no longer have to pay into that because technically we weren't supposed to. And so as a state, that's 40 million Californians that would revoke that status. And if you do that, that would sort of be like seceding from the union without seceding from the union.
I gotta say, I'm a little bit curious. So, a patriot, thank you for your service, veteran.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have families that served in all four branches, although myself didn't. But
Thank you.
I also heard you say things like, maybe we don't need the feds and the CIA and all these different federal agencies coming in here and doing what they want. Maybe they need to ask us permission. That's the total opposite way the federal system works. And then I hear you talking about maybe we don't need to pay our money into to support the federal system, and maybe we don't need to abide by federal laws. That sounds very secession-y, all those ideas, while taking a strong stance against it. How do you explain the interplay?
Well, again, if you look at, say, the 16th Amendment, we talk about that's the Income Tax Act. So when we look at that amendment, it's actually contradictory to the Bill of Rights. So the Constitution is clear when it talks about anything that is contradiction to the supreme laws of the land is null and void. So when that act came into play, when the Federal Reserve Act came into play, that basically enslaved everybody. And a lot of people don't understand that we really can actually revoke that status and paying into it, because when you sign, again, remember I said contract. So again, under the Constitution, when you engage into a contract like the IRS and you sign your 1099s and everything for when it comes to your taxes, you're making an agreement with the Federal Reserve that you're going to allow for them to basically garnish your wages. Well, you don't have to allow for that. And it is actually unconstitutional. So Congress actually created something that was contradictory to the supreme laws of the land. This happens all the time, which is why people have to be very careful of the language that the legislative branch does. So
Sure.
it's not actually seceding. You're basically just going back to what we originally were in the first place. And that allows for prosperity, and it prevents from the government always having to meet a profit margin. So you're not a profit margin, you're a community, you're made up of people, you're a naturalized citizen. But again, a lot of people think that they're a U.S. citizen and a resident, and they're neither. They're naturalized under God-given rights protected under the Constitution, which is why the 16th Amendment and the Income Tax Act is actually not constitutional. But again, you don't have people that know this stuff or go this deep into it. So, I think it was the Constitution that was ratified in 1791, but it changed from Constitution for the United States to Constitution of the United States back in, I think it was 1879. So that put us under business law. So this is, again, where we're under, and we can actually get out from underneath that, which
Sure.
a lot of people don't realize.
Sure, but emotionally, spiritually, the packaging of secession is usually, I don't like the federal government telling me what to do. I want to be completely free of that. On the one hand, you're seeming to say, I don't want to leave America. But on the other hand, you're seeming to say, I love the idea of being free of federal attachment, which is almost quasi-independence. Am I getting this wrong?
A little bit, because the federal government predominantly, again, is for what we are creating as a unified country, right? So we also have a military. We want to make sure that we're maintaining that. So a requirement to still having to pay into some taxes, but there's a limit to that. We shouldn't be paying into countries. We shouldn't be having erroneous bills that are 6,000 pages long, and then the state and the people from every state have to pay into that. That isn't constitutional. The Constitution is really only supposed to take, under the Constitution, they're only supposed to take money that is in excess of businesses. That's it. But if you and I work together, we're not supposed to, it's not supposed to be taxed. but it is because of, again, erroneous languages, and no state has ever pushed back on this. So again, you can still be part of the union, and we have our military, we've got our federal government as a whole, as a nation, and what we believe in, and what we do to fight for freedom. And when we have immigration, lawful immigrants that come here, right, we are allowed to freely move throughout the entire nation. I love the entire nation. I've been to every state. But again, every state has its own independence. That's why they're independent, right? So the federal government is not necessarily supposed to make, again, a one-size-fits-all. So there are limitations that the federal government has overstepped that is supposed to allow for the states to handle. And they've overstepped. So I'm talking about rescinding back on where they have overreached, but not getting rid of the union. And then they have overtaxed us, but again, we still need that. So there's a balance here.
You're talking about going back to the original core American states and that floor basement of federalism that they had, but still technically part of the union. But effectively, with that little control over California, we would be operating almost as if we were an independent nation.
Yes, and I that's why I said it would be like seceding without actually seceding.
Okay. Let's say we've talked to some of the other candidates, and a lot of them took the stance of, I'm not for this, but I love ignoring federal regulations, which I always find bizarre because the last people who did that were South Carolina, say as you will. But one of the things that they would say is, maybe I'm not for it, but the votes are there. 25 to 35 states don't like us here in California. They talk badly about us all the time. And if somebody said, hey, would you vote us off the island? They'd vote us off the island. The votes are there. What say you? Could we actually get the votes, or is there too many states love us, even though they trash talk us about every other day on Fox TV? Are the votes there? Could we legally leave? I'm not saying we should, but do you think, given our horrible reputation with most of the rest of America, we could actually pull this off legally?
My guess would be, I mean, to be honest, I don't know. But if I had to choose either or, I wouldn't be surprised to say that there would be the votes. I have heard many conversations about it because of the fact that, yes, the state of California is the 5th, 6th largest economy in the world. So technically, it outweighs a lot of, other nations. So if that's the case, it has the ability to do that. But I think the rest of course, there would be definitely pushback against it. So would there be votes? I wouldn't be surprised if there were.
What about the fact that California's been a donor state? And I know we don't manage all our own money properly. I get that. No. But, let's say I got a house and my cousin who never works comes over to my house whenever he feels like that, sits at my table, eats dinner, insults me, and on his way out takes money out of my wallet, and he does this for 45 years. And then I don't get to buy a new car for my son, but he buys a Ferrari just for the hell of it because he's got enough extra cash. Is that a fair deal to Californians?
You mean in the sense that we pretty much, we give to those who don't work for it, and those who do work for it don't get it. That's pretty much what you're saying. That's
there's 35 states that get way more money than they put into the system. And everybody goes, well, we want to help the poor. Fine, but we have more poor than them.
Yeah.
Our schools are I've lived in every ghetto in every major city in California. It's worse than parts of Louisiana and Alabama. So how come we can't spend our money on our poor and we got to spend it on poor in other states who don't like us for who we are? How's that fair?
It's not fair. In fact, that's some of the other things that I would be dealing with as well if I'm to be elected as governor, is that, a lot of our money goes towards other states or goes to other purposes that the state in and of itself, I hate saying this, even though we might be the 5th, 6th largest economy, we're broke. And we have our own issues going on right now here. So before we can actually start loaning out in such a way or being a donor state, we need to get our books in order, which they're not in order, and they can be. Then we wouldn't have a problem. We'd actually be a much more lucrative state and engaging in much greater prosperity than we ever have before. But again, when we have corrupt legislation that is engaging with these contractual agreements behind closed doors, they have to meet a profit margin. The profit margin then comes out of the people's pocket. And so they're making these deals. And I know for a fact that a lot of our land has been bought up here in the state of California from China, from Russia, from India. You'll get stonewalled when you start looking at some commercial property that's actually having a front entity that is actually owning it, and they're coming from other countries, so they raise up the premiums. So that forces a lot of the land to go up, and we have to pay for it. And then again, we're loaning it out. We are actually here in California overworked, and yet we also produce so much food that again, we loan it out, we send it out, we give it away. We would have so much more and be able to do things in such a greater level, but we have a lot of selfishness and corruption that's going on. So no, you're absolutely right. It isn't fair. And no, under my administration, if I'm to be elected, we're going to rein that in. So we're going to get things balanced. We're going to get the books balanced. We're going to expose what needs to be exposed. It has to be in order for us, but we have to put a moratorium on, giving out our money. Californians are getting tired of it. So let's get back to balancing budget first.
Let's say, if there was, let's say somebody said, you know what, I don't want to leave anymore. I would just like California to revert to territory status. We didn't leave America. Still keep that star on the flag. But we're a territory, not a state, which gives us way more freedom, close to the amount the 13 states had.
Yeah.
Is that a softer sell for veterans?
I can't answer that directly. It might be, but then again,
it's fair.
I mean, it's possible. Yeah.
What would you say to veterans? Because we do have some veterans who do support the idea of California independence. And what they said was, I went to go fight in these foreign wars that we didn't need to fight.
I agree with that.
And, I come back and then I see so many problems at home, and I see California was not for fighting all these foreign wars. I'm a veteran, I served, but I felt a little bit used. And I think America's got kind of a empire complex, and sometimes, not always, goes around poking its finger in little holes and making problems. And I don't want to be part of that. Is it okay for a veteran to feel that way?
It is okay. I will admit to that myself as well. When you join the military, most of us do not have a true understanding of what the military is for, and why you get into it. The military in and of itself is in the business of war, and it is in the business of killing people. And it is predominantly supposed to be to protect America. And of course, we've then also engaged in policing the rest of the world because of the fact that, yes, we've become basically, the most powerful nation in the world. And so that sort of comes with a level of responsibility, you could say, but we've definitely abused it. We've definitely engaged in some activity where we have no business being in. Our way of life is not the way of life of other countries. I've seen it. I've been there. I've lived there in many different countries. And I mean, it's not our duty to go there and try to fix the world's problems. But of course, we do have a responsibility when tyranny exists. However, I would agree with you. A lot of veterans come back and feel like, yeah, we've been abused. We were, performing in operations that maybe we shouldn't have been engaged in. But when you get in, we all get, we're given that mentality of follow orders now, ask questions later. Right. And a lot of times we come home and we say, why, I really wish I wasn't in that operation. Or, many of us are left with PTSD. And we just don't want to engage in it anymore. And that's why I hear a lot of people saying, why aren't our veterans right now, of all things that are happening right now, why aren't they stepping up? Why aren't they out there screaming? I'm saying there are, but at the same time, they fought their wars. They've already fought for this nation. They don't want to pick up arms again because they understand the danger behind it. And they understand, the ramifications of what you're about to engage in. They don't want you to have war on your doorsteps. There are other ways that we can do this right now before we have to pick up arms. Like, let's get it right. So I understand, and I am in total agreement. But the one thing where I stand on is that's why I say I'm not necessarily for and supporting of seceding.
Sure. Well, awesome at interviews. I want to say thank you for serving. I want to say thank you for bringing up the role of veterans. I'm in Fresno. The Central Valley has one of the highest veteran populations of anywhere in California. We also had some of the highest amount of KIAs and the highest amount of dismembered people. You can literally walk around, and we do not do enough to take care of these people. I'm not sure that's all California's fault. I think we use people, and we don't necessarily worry about them after they come back. It's, hey, thank you, you're a hero, here's the parade. But then what about 5 years after, when those medical conditions start popping up, where the PTSD gets to become too much? I think we're like, hey, We used you. You fought the war. I kind of don't need you anymore. Here's a little pittance to keep moving on. And there's this one story my dad tells me. He didn't go to Vietnam, but he was in during Vietnam. Luck of the draw, he just managed to never get sent, but he lost a lot of friends. And he was talking about how he came back to Fresno in the 1970s and he saw all these vets coming back with what he called the 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah.
And he said, they're good people, but they never came back.
No.
We don't have the technology to fix them. And he was talking about 2007, and he'd come home and he'd go, I saw the new crop. And he made this, and we're like, what do you mean the new crop? You don't farm. And he's like, 23-year-olds who look just like the 23-year-olds in 1977. I see them all. They got the exact same stare. I remember 30 years later. We have a lot of vets here. We had a lot of KIA. We have a lot of people here. In fact, we have a disproportionate number of people who are impacted from these foreign wars. And yet California is the most place against foreign wars. We protested against the Iraq War, against the Vietnam War. Why is it that the place that's the most anti-war place seems to have the most broken humans from America's love of war?
For me, that's a great question. And I did notice that too. Once I got out, I myself suffered from PTSD. I didn't even know it till, a couple years later. And I realized too, that there is a way, and not to digress, why we have so many here. Again, military bases, a lot of time wherever there's military bases, we're also, one of the most heavy populated states. So that's probably why, just because of the sheer quantity of people. And then when we get out, this is where we swore in. This is where I swore in. I was born here. So I'm not going to leave my state. I'm here to fight for my state. But I think one of the things that we haven't really focused on is when our veterans get out, how we can actually handle and take care of them the right way. And I discovered when I got out, I needed education because I was so heavily taught and trained under such duress that once it all stopped, I actually didn't realize that I was screaming in the middle of the night. When I was dating and my girlfriend would wake me up, and even to this day, my wife, will still wake me up just from sheer shakes or something will trigger, that I'll start having dreams again. And people don't understand. One of the things that really helped me out was education. And one of the things when I was in San Diego, they had a work study program. That work study program, I believed in part, is something that we need to expand on. And I actually helped write with the Los Angeles Community College district their flow chart, because they didn't actually understand not only monetarily, but they could provide jobs for the veterans that didn't cost the colleges a dime. In fact, the colleges would get $7 to $20 a head per veteran. All they needed to do was provide a job. And the job could be anything. And in fact, the college campuses realized that they had so many open positions that they couldn't fulfill, that it was a free, sort of a free opening position that was a benefit to them. So the more they helped, the more they worked on the work study program, the more veterans started to come. So I was at Los Angeles Valley Community College, and I helped take the program from 20 veterans all the way to, I think it was 300 in one semester, once I helped kind of reorganize it and structure. And these veterans were getting a job working, in the athletic department. They were a teacher's aide. They were working in admin. They were working cleanup. They were helping anytime there was an event. They would work, just basic security with radios and flashlights, as maybe ushers and stuff and things that were happening. So this was a benefit, and it really helped these veterans to focus on and get their mind into a new subject area so that they could reacclimate what it meant to be a civilian again. And we don't spend enough time doing that. And school was one of the biggest avenues that at least I utilized, that we don't help out in that way. And it's such a benefit to the school. As governor, I'm going to open up all the community colleges and re-spread out that whole flow chart at the university level and the community college level, and even at the trade school level, so that these vets, because you're right, you get out, everybody says thank you, they pat you on the back, but they don't want to hire you. In fact, a lot of places that I went to would not hire me, and they were actually biased towards veterans. I was told many times, just looking for a job that paid, $6.25, $7.25 an hour, would tell me, well, we're going to pay you less. And I was like, well, that's illegal. You guys are being, they were discriminating against me for being a vet. And they said, well, if you're looking for a $6.25, $7.25 an hour job, you really don't have deep pockets. So take it or leave it. So these are the things that were said to me. And so a lot of people don't understand what vets go through except other vets per se. So this is what we need to focus on, is giving our vets something to do. And it starts with education so that they can get proper acclimation, so that when they suffer through PTSD or they're having psychosis, they don't feel left behind, even though you're right, they never came home. This is a way to help them because they need something to do. And when you give them something to do that's not picking up arms, they're going to reacclimate. It's just going to take time. And we don't do that.
I wanted to back you up on something. So for all the people who are saying, why aren't the vets stepping in? They already did step in. You know, they served, they secured your ability to complain and moan and protest and vote. Yeah. And many of the vets that I know don't get involved in politics because they're like, I'm tired. I did my 4 years. It's up to you. I secured your ability to get out there and go fix these problems. So you go take it from here. And I think compared to being shot at, folks, we got the better half of the deal. So I really don't think we should be pointing at the veterans going, how come we aren't getting more involved? Frankly, facing fragmentation grenades and missiles and stuff is a lot harder than going to the protest and staying informed and voting. So, folks, they gave us the easier job. Yeah. Let's take it and stop complaining.
Absolutely. I couldn't say that better. Thank you.
And there are veterans who get involved. I mean, I've seen veterans who love their political junkies. I've seen vets in Bernie Sanders. I've seen vets in Republicans. I love the fact that you can't tell. They go, oh, all vets are conservative. Maybe, but I've seen as many vets love Bernie Sanders and wear the beret and like, yeah, I'm a Marine, but I'm a Marine for Bernie. Yeah. And then I'm a Republican. So I just love, you can't really put them into a category.
No. We all have our differences. The one thing that most even guys that I was running against that were, Democrats, we all respected each other for our differences of opinion. We completely understood how to, engage with each other, without being cruel. There's a couple of them that are out there, but for the most part, most of them, we respected each other, and we respect each other because we all know that we served. We knew we threw our lives on the line. And right then and there, it's kind of like being in the ring. I respect anybody that steps into the ring with me. I respect anybody that throws their hat into the arena with this, with this race. I don't have to like you, but there's a respect there. And when it comes with veterans, there's a camaraderie. When I was running alongside with Mike Garcia here, who won our district, he's a jet jockey. He's a Navy pilot. I'm a helo guy, and so we did search and rescue. So we were teasing each other when we were at the debates. So even though we were running against each other for the position, we very much respected each other. We would tease each other sitting next to each other, just little inside jokes. And what was really unique though was towards the end, he didn't ask me, but I endorsed him afterwards. I did a full production video, endorsed him, and he didn't know I had taken some pictures along our journey where we had met up a few times. And he called me and he asked me to be on his team and to represent him in one of the offices that he has here in the 25th district. And of course, I was very humbled by that. But that's right when COVID hit, and then we got shut down. And they were really trying to struggle to figure out where they could fit me in. And I was like, Mike, do what you got to do. I'm here for my community. But he had just won the special, and now he had to run for the general. So he was just slammed. And I was like, don't try to squeeze me in where there's just really no room. When there's time, come back. But then when this happened, I jumped into running for governor. For me, I was like, okay, I've had enough. I get it now. And now I'm going out there, full force. Before I was trying to play politics and be nice and sweet. And I was like, that's not me. I'm not politically correct. I'm in your face. That's why I tell people, I said, if you got a sensitivity issue, there's the door, because you're not going to find that with me. Mike and I really got along, and that, we had that Navy language and stuff, talk like a sailor, because we were sailors. So, so there's that great camaraderie. But there was a couple of other people that were Army, and we got along with them just great. We didn't agree with each other, but we respected each other. And so a lot of people don't see that sometimes, for those of us that are vets that do get into office or try to get in.
We're going to wrap it up there. I'm going to ask you the question I asked you before, and we're going to leave it to the audience to see how much of a difference to answer. Now, you and I are in a cigar store, and I'm walking out the door, and you have 2 minutes to get inside my head. Now, you've covered a variety of issues today. I asked you this question at the beginning, and you talked about 3 different policy prescriptions. You talked about your military background. You talked about the lack of transparency and faith in California. Let's find out if your answer to that random person is the same one you gave about an hour ago. What would you say to a totally random person in 2 minutes to get them to think about you on the way to the election?
I would say at the end of the day, it's irrelevant of whether you're red party, green party, blue party, purple party, whether you're right wing, left wing, moderate, conservative, libertarian. None of that matters, because at the end of the day, to me, what you are is red, white, and blue. You are an American. I'm an American, and I am here for our freedoms and sovereignties wholeheartedly, 100%. Nothing else to me matters.
Hot. We're going to end it there. Thank you, Candidate Daniel Mercuri, for being here. I appreciate it. This
Thank you.
Evening, and we're open to any candidate. Thank you again. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you very soon.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just feel like I think I'm going to be seeing you pretty soon. I don't know where. I don't know how. I get that vibe. I'll leave it there. I'm not endorsing the man. I'm not endorsing him. I didn't agree with everything he said. We had a friendly talk, and I'm just getting a vibe, and that's all I'm putting out there, okay? So no one needs to call me after the meeting, all right? Thank you. I'll check you later.
All right. Take care.